William Hill Sportsbook put out its futures odds, updated its futures odds for the college football season as far as championships. So they went through the NFL, then all of college as well. And they updated their SEC championship odds. And they've got, interestingly enough, I found this interesting. They've got Alabama as the prohibitive favorite. And part of me understands why they would have Alabama as the prohibitive favorite, because they're trying to generate action on both sides of the line. So Alabama, of course, is going to be favored. But what did surprise me is the gap. They got Alabama at minus 135. That means you'd have to bet $135 to win 100. Next best odds, Georgia at plus 450, meaning a $100 bet, you'd win $450. LSU at plus 500. Florida at plus 600. Auburn at plus 1,000. And then Texas A&M at plus 1,200. Some longer odds, Mississippi State plus 10,000. Tennessee plus 10,000. Kentucky plus 15,000. Missouri plus 15,000. Ole Miss, South Carolina also plus 15,000. Vanderbilt plus 2,500. 25,000. And Arkansas plus 50,000. You surprised to see Arkansas with the worst odds to win the SEC? That did surprise me a bit. Anyway, what I kind of wanted to hit on is something you've heard me say a little bit. When I look at that, I go, where's the best value? The best value is Florida, and it's not even close. Florida at plus 600. Because when I say, okay, who's got the best shot of getting to win the title game, you got to get there. So if you look at the West, LSU, Bama, Auburn, A&M, there is a bit of a logjam. Even if the perception is that Alabama comes into the season as a prohibitive favorite, they still got to play Georgia in their rotating cross-divisional, and they got to go to Baton Rouge. So Bama does have a tougher road than they would have in normal years. Flip side of that, it's never been more wide open for Florida to take the East, to unseat Georgia. Georgia has a grad transfer quarterback coming in. And we're going to talk more next hour about Jamie Newman, the grad transfer coming in from Wake Forest, because there's a lot of people super high on him, and I'm not so sure that I am, and I'll go on record with that. But when I look at Florida, they play Georgia in a neutral site game in Jacksonville. They get LSU in Gainesville, and their rotating cross-divisional is Ole Miss. Now, they got to go to Oxford, but new coach, Lane Kiffin, you're not really sure how that offense is going to transition. Florida, even on the road, likely to be favored in that game. And remember, Florida returns Kyle Trask, who is the leading returning passer in the SEC this year. I mean, he and Kellen Mond are the two most decorated returning quarterbacks in the SEC, which is in part why I've said it's never been more wide open, because quarterback play in the league this year, there aren't a lot of skins on the wall. So you look at what Florida has, how the schedule favors Florida, and you look at Georgia on the flip side. Georgia's they play Auburn, and this is their permanent cross-divisional, and they get that game in Athens. But Georgia's rotating cross-divisional is Alabama, and they got to go to Tuscaloosa. So theoretically, this is a year where maybe that's the difference, is Florida has to go to Ole Miss, Georgia has to go to Alabama. That might be the difference right there in who wins the East. So Florida, by far, is the best value play here. I'm a little surprised to see the gap, though, between Bama at minus 135 and Georgia at plus 450. Coincidentally, William Hill updated those SEC odds as ESPN updated its FPI rankings for 2020 and LSU's opponents in 2020. And I want to just make clear, and the reason I'm pairing these together, William Hill is a sports book. Those are odds makers placing these odds on chances to win the championship. ESPN's FPI is a computer. They plug in all the data, they simulate the season 10,000 times, and they spit out the metrics. So one is human odds makers. The other is computers looking at data. And there's one thing in particular when I looked at the updated FPI rankings for LSU's schedule that jumped off the page. So let me get I'll give you the nuts and bolts first, and I'll see if the same thing that struck me struck you. So they play Texas San Antonio, 122 out of 130 is where LSU got a 99% chance of winning that game. Texas, they rank 11th in the country. FPI does. But still give LSU a 70% chance of winning that game. Rice is 103 in the country. LSU's got a 97% chance of winning that. Ole Miss, 38th. Still, LSU a 91% chance of winning that game. Nichols, they don't rank the FCS. Florida, they rank 12th and give LSU a 54% chance of winning that game. So even though it's a road game, LSU, which likely might not be favored in that game, FPI gives LSU a better than 50-50 shot of winning it. LSU at Arkansas, they got Arkansas 59th overall. LSU a 91% chance of winning that game. Mississippi State, they rank 72nd overall. LSU a 96% chance of winning that game. The only game where LSU does not have better than 50-50 odds of winning is Bama. It's a home game. LSU has a 42% chance of winning that. They rank Bama third in the country. The other one that stands out is Auburn. Auburn's ranked 9th, according to FPI. And LSU has a 50.3% chance of winning, so right at 50-50. If you look at the FPI rankings, LSU plays number 3, number 9, number 11, 12, and 15. And then 38, 39, 59, 72, and then the layups against Rice, who's 103, and UTSA, which is 122, and then, of course, Nichols, which is not ranked because it's an FCS school. Did you catch the thing that jumped out to me? FPI has LSU's weakest conference opponent this year. Not Arkansas. Not Ole Miss. Not South Carolina. Mississippi State. The computers rank Mississippi State 72nd in the country. Ole Miss is 38th with new coach Lane Kiffin. South Carolina, which was, I played a brutal schedule last year, but wasn't very good. South Carolina, 39th. Arkansas, 59th. 13 spots behind Arkansas is where they have Mississippi State with Mike Leach and grad transfer quarterback KJ Costello. That is fascinating to me because I think one of the more interesting teams in college football this year is Mississippi State with Mike Leach. Not just because they got the Pirate as the coach, but can Mike Leach bring in air raid to the SEC and have success? And you would think Joe Moorhead was recruiting for a spread offense, and now Leach gets a quarterback, a smart guy, a veteran guy who started a bunch of games at Stanford, who's seen Mike Leach's offense and knows what he's trying to accomplish. You bring in that guy, and the computers still look at Mississippi State as the weakest conference opponent on LSU's schedule. 72nd overall in the country. Might well be a long year in Stark Vegas. By the way, the Mississippi schools come to Baton Rouge this year. LSU's at Florida, at Arkansas, or excuse me, at Florida, at Auburn, at Arkansas, and then, at A&M, of course, to wrap up the regular season.